Hi, I'm Tammy Sevcov, and this is Worth Considering, where we look at different sides of issues to stretch our hearts and minds as believers to better engage with the world around us. And today, we're talking about how to restore the rightful governmental structure and enact an absolute theocracy. Or not. Growing up in Cold War era 1980s, the word communism was a bad word, and even its close cousin socialism was definitely frowned upon. Yet in the last number of years, we've seen a huge shift in our government in the United States where there's been talk and political pressure toward a more socialistic approach. But what really is the difference? For those of us who have lived only in America most of our lives, it seems like all we're talking about is philosophy, the approach that sounds good, right? Socialism sounds fantastic. Communism sounds fantastic in a lot of ways. But what is the difference? Because for most of us, you wouldn't know the difference between socialism, communism, capitalism, a constitutional monarchy, the Democratic Republic of Congo, no, not that. But right, it's just a lot of words, and we've studied things in school, but what do they really mean? What is the real difference, and how does that operate? I happened to grow up in both a little bit of the US and a little bit in Canada throughout my childhood, and I got to kind of experience a little bit of a more socialized government, which is in Canada, and then also the capitalist government of the United States. My parents were both American and Canadian, so I really got a dual view as I grew up. And I wanted to share a little bit with you to start this conversation. But I want to start off by saying this: no matter what we look at, it's not God's best. Because when God set up a government, he set it up for him to be in charge and only him. He didn't want no parliament, no Congress, no Senate, no committee meetings. He thought he could do it. Strangely, he thought he could do it and do it well. But the people rejected him. The children of Israel rejected that idea and wanted a king like the other governments around them. And so he gave them that. With the philosophy that we're going to look at, the approaches we're going to look at, I want us to start with the idea that this is man's best effort to try and do a good system. And there's going to be pros and cons to any of them. So let's take a look at the healthcare system specifically to start with. In Canada, the socialized medicine has a very different approach than even our current Obamacare era universal health care. It's different because we still have privatized medicine. We just have enforced insurance, which is a unique approach. In Canada, what we have is a healthcare that is basically owned and run by the government. So everything is a little bit more structured that way. It's not different types of insurance. It's one type. Now, I haven't lived there for 20 plus years, so I can't speak to all the nuances of what it currently runs like. But just from a general perspective, no matter what you earn, whatever you make, you will be able to get care. You never have to think about, if I can afford to go to the doctor. So that's a really beautiful thing. It really is. I think it's a positive. However, there are cons to that too, when it's all structured that way. Let me help you with this a little bit. I have a childhood friend who was dealing with a debilitating disease, and she was able to get some care in Canada, but when she went to get the more intense surgery that she needed to help try and regain her mobility, there was only one doctor in the entire country that had the ability to do the surgery, and he rarely did it. However, this type of surgery needs a very specific and deft hand, and the more you do it, the more likely you are to have a success with it. So when she did the research, she realized she'd really prefer to come down to the United States and get somebody who does this surgery all the time to do it, because then it's her life she's dealing with. So in order to do that, Canadian healthcare wasn't going to help her with it. So she had to her friends rallied together, and they brought in the tens of thousands of dollars to get her the surgery she needed. And it was a success. And she is now able to play with her little children and have a restored life. And that is just one of the realities of dealing with a more structured healthcare system when healthcare is really done in a truly socialistic way, which our current structure in the United States doesn't work that way, but it also is still really screwed up. So, if you want to move toward a really universal healthcare system, you're going to deal with these kinds of things where certain care is not gettable. Also because certain Doctors don't want to work in a socialized system. They want to work where they can make more money. Now, I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying it is. So that's just a reality that continues to be a factor. I mean, foreign dignitaries from other countries come to our nation, the United States, to get health care, to get surgeries, because we're the most advanced in so many areas. We have the best equipment, those kinds of things that are just the factors of being a capitalist structure. It puts you in this place where you're trying to get ahead. You realize you serve the best because you get the most money out of it. And it is a motivator for a lot of people. We're not dealing with all people with genuine, pure hearts and who don't care about making money. It's a world we live in. So although socialized medicine sounds amazing, there definitely are cons to it as well. And we have to also realize that somebody has to pay for all of these things. So it's not like it's free. It's taxed. There's various structures that get in to make sure we can pay for some of this. Just the fact that doctors don't make as much money isn't the only limiter. There are some things where the government has to decide, no, we're not going to offer that service. It's not necessary. There's layers to this conversation. Another factor within our capitalist nation that has been brought to my attention, it was actually at a conference event I was at, and some people were sharing about stories of being second generation, of being children of immigrants to the United States, and how their families had endured great hardship in order to try and get ahead in our nation. Where some of them came from countries where they had good education, but because they didn't have language, they didn't have English when they came here, and they were escaping political persecution, and it was sudden. They didn't have the ability to get a decent job. They were working, as a busboy, as a grown adult with a great education. They were working menial tasks just to try and put food on the table. Others who, because they didn't have language, were maybe working 3 part-time jobs in order to try and get what they needed in this nation. And it was just hard, and it was heart-wrenching, and it was moving. And I ended up speaking to someone who's from the Middle East who had immigrated here. And I was sharing some of these stories and just how they touched my heart. And he kind of paused me and he said, "Tammy, you don't understand." And okay, I don't understand. What don't I understand? He said, "Tammy, the reason they came here is because they could have the opportunities to get ahead. They had to escape their countries because their countries were controlling, were demanding, were politically dangerous to them. Or they were leaving because they couldn't make money. Their class, their gender, their situation limited them from the ability to get ahead. We have something precious in the United States," he was expounding to me, "that allows for people, even if it's not for them themselves, they can work to get out of dangerous and difficult situations. That's something that's special." Now, I realize that's not only true in America. There are other countries that give opportunities to people. But the passion of this gentleman really startled me, because I realized sometimes we look at just the negative side, not understanding the ability that we live in a country that your bloodlines don't dictate if you can work a job. Your class or your political connections don't dictate if you can invest and work to get ahead. There is something about that is special, and it is why so many people want to move here. There is potential, there's opportunities. But I'd love your thoughts on this. What is it about America that makes us flourish? And what is it about America that honestly we've got to fix? There's some problems here. What is it about socialized medicine or healthcare that we really believe in, that we think needs to be a value for us? Like, what can we do? I'd really love your ideas on this. I can tell you from my perspective, I think that the government and things like healthcare and some of these structures, I think there could be better structures and systems put in place. I think we could improve them. I'm just not sure that absolutely moving towards some other system is the way to go. Maybe there's other ways to do it. In fact, I want to talk to you a little bit about God's way. Yeah, I said God's way because I want to look back at the Bible and consider if there's some things in there that we should learn from. When you look at the Old Testament, there was something really beautiful that God created, and it was called the Year of Jubilee. Now, we have no proof that the children of Israel actually used the Year of Jubilee, but I want to tell you what it was. Every 50 years, everything would reset. So you had land as allocated to your family lineage, and if you sold it or your parents sold it, it was able to be regained on the Year of Jubilee. If you had to sell yourself into, to pay off a debt, to sell yourself into kind of a service or servanthood to someone to pay off a debt, on the Year of Jubilee, that would reset and you would no longer be their servant. So God had created this system where even if people got themselves in trouble, and they could get themselves in trouble, it wasn't eliminated, but what it was is that that wouldn't be passed on from generation to generation to generation. After 50 years, which is still a long time, your choice has still affected your kids, but there would be a place where it could be reset. You had the land back. You had the ability now to start to work toward having a trade, an ability to serve and make means for your family. And there's something about that does smell a little bit like socialism. There's a little bit of an idea there that God created a way to kind of even the playing field and not keep people at a disadvantage. And I really love that. Something about that seems so right, to be able to say, look, it's not forever. If you get yourself in trouble, you aren't in servitude forever. And just so you know, that people would, pay for and understand land values based on those years. If there's only 10 years yet left till the Year of Jubilee, you didn't pay like you were going to have it for 50 years. So that was unique. And then when you go to the New Testament, there's this other picture we see, and it's that Christian communism look that we sometimes can see in the book of Acts, where people started selling things and having them in common. They started sharing what they had. The thing that's unique about this, though, is that it wasn't enforced on them. It came from the inside out. Like, the more they got to know this personal God, this real God, they began to leak out selfishness and become selfless. I mean, isn't that being more like Jesus? That's what we're supposed to be. They began to be the people of God that just said, I'm not worried about myself above others. I want us all to be taken care of. And that ability to kind of remove selfishness and be genuine in sharing is, I think, the most compelling part of that picture. It's not about a communist structure that God demanded of them. It was about a heart of love and a heart of giving that just came out and bubbled up within them. It makes me wonder, where am I still so selfish? And I think of myself and my time above others. And why is it still like that? Do I know this good, giving God well enough that it would really change me? You become who you spend time with. Do I spend enough time with Him to really be changed? To be the people that, or the person that is one of giving, who shows love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, right? That selflessness that is the image of God. So I have to ask you, what do we do? How do we become the people of God we're called to be? How can we be responsible to be givers? I mean, the Bible talks about taking care of the fatherless and the orphan and the widow. What can we do to do that well? I think, honestly, we need to stop delegating care. We need to stop thinking that the government's going to fix things. And we need to start stirring one another up to love and good works, like the Bible says. Stirring one another up to care for each other, to take care of those who are in a difficult situation. The poor, the fatherless, and the widow in the Old Testament were those who couldn't get a job, couldn't take care of themselves. There was something that God was really close to the heart of God that says, no, you need to take care of people. Help participate, maybe even just giving financially toward a mission or a women's shelter, helping those who are in a difficult situation. But maybe it's being activated to serve yourself. Not serve yourself, but serve others for yourself. Be a person who's a servant. I believe that's going to be one of the biggest things that can show the testimony of Jesus Christ, that we are people who give, who aren't looking out just for our own selves, but giving to others. And that's where we individually can start to make a difference in whatever economy we live in. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you being here. Love to learn from you too, so please add your voice to the comments. And as always, the rule is if others want to rage, let's just not engage. We don't need to engage with fighting. We want to learn from one another. However, would you do me a favor? Would you give me a big thumbs up? Let me know that you liked the video. I want to create more great content for you. And we've got new videos coming out every Thursday, so please subscribe so that you can be notified. And as always, this week, remember, it's worth considering another point of view.